Good morning all. Welcome to Managing Pull Requests with Swift at JustEat. I'm very excited to be here with you in a remote way. I hope we'll have the chance to meet in person very soon. Today, I'm going to walk you through our journey on how we improve the way we manage pull requests. Before we start, just a quick bit about me. My name is Andrea, and as you may have heard, I'm Italian. I'm based in Bristol in the UK, and I work as a senior iOS engineer at JustEat Takeaway. You can find me online on Twitter or LinkedIn as well, talking about product teams, empowered engineers, and working in a team in general. I'll be around after the talk, so if you want to have a chat about these topics, feel free to drop me a message. And in case you were wondering, my favorite takeaway is obviously pizza. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the company, JustEat Takeaway is a leading global online food delivery marketplace. We are focused on connecting consumers and restaurants through our platforms. With nearly over 250,000 restaurants, we offer consumers a wide variety of food choices. To give you an idea at the scale we operate, last year we managed over 500 million orders worldwide. Those are massive numbers, and as you can imagine, working at this scale highlights some problems. And one of them was the way we manage iOS pull requests. So let's talk about this. When I joined JustEat back in 2019, the process to ask for a pull request review was to drop a message in a Slack channel with a net here saying, hey, I open a PR, can I have a couple of reviews please? With the link to GitHub. Now this practice works if you have a small team of engineers. But usually when you start to grow like we did, this process doesn't scale. Engineers get busier and they stop to have an active look at this Slack channel. This is exactly what happened to us, and this is quickly became a problem. Pull requests start to accumulate, nobody was reviewing anymore, and those that were locally merged got a very quick review. Approvals were based more on the trust on the author rather than the quality of the code. And so we said, okay, we need a new process. We need to change something. So we defined 3 goals we were looking in a new pull request process. The first goal was to have a faster feedback loop on pull requests. This is key for each PR process. Now, faster can mean different things. It depends on the team. But the point here is to not let PRs accumulate over time, because otherwise your code gets outdated. You're more likely to have merge conflicts and other type of issues that will slow down the entire process. Second goal was to have high quality reviews. We want to make sure the code we merge and ship to end users doesn't contain bugs. But most importantly, it's well structured and robust for years to come. Third goal was to enforce ownership on the code. We want to empower engineers and give them the responsibility to maintain the code of their features. We'll talk about this in a moment. So today, I'll show you how the iOS JustEat app is structured and how teams are organized. I'll show you some issues we faced and what ideas we tried. Then I'll show you 2 solutions we implemented. The first one is called Code Owners, which is from GitHub. And the second one is actually a tool we created that we're going to open source today. So let's get started. Now, on the iOS JustEat app, we use a modular architecture. The entire app is split into self-contained modules. We have the domain modules. They look after an entire feature, a user flow, or an area of the app. Those modules are powered by the core and shared modules. They are the fundamentals of the app. For example, we have API client that is our network layer module, or we have JustUI that contains all of our UI components based on our design system. You may have heard about the Conway's law, which basically says that the structure, the architecture of your code is usually a copy of your organization's structure. This is exactly the case for JustEat. In fact, the modules are organized in a similar way teams are organized. At the base, we have the iOS core team that looks after the overall health of the codebase, and it's responsible to maintain core and shared modules that empower the rest of the organization to build great features. On top of them, in fact, we have vertical teams. They are cross-functional teams responsible for a product area. On the iOS side, those teams take care about one or more domain modules. So as you can see, each module manages different responsibilities, different set of features, and those modules are all owned and maintained by a team. The source code of all modules is contained in a monorepo. This means we have a single repository with all the iOS code where a lot of pull requests are opened on a daily basis, each one with a different context, related to different features, owned by a different team. The problem we had was that most of the time, engineers were reviewing pull requests without any context on the feature or the module itself. When an application starts to grow quite a lot, as an engineer, it is hard to keep track of all the moving parts. The more the app grows, and the more is important to have the right people reviewing the right pull requests. So we started to think about possible solutions. The first one that we actually tried for some months was called PR Rota. Essentially, it was a recurring event on a calendar where each day one of the iOS engineers had the role to review all the pull requests open on that day. This helped us to at least get one review on each PR, but it had a lot of downsides. It was difficult to add or remove a member from the vacation calendar. Sometimes the engineer was very busy, maybe fixing an important issue, or maybe they were on holiday or sick. Or even sometimes people just forgot to be the PR Rota. So this process wasn't working for us. Second idea we got was to create a weekly chart of top blockers pull requests. The idea was to push engineers to have a deeper look into the code and don't feel bad about blocking a PR. This is a problem we had. And the third idea was to have two dedicated engineers to review all the PRs without any rotation, acting like gatekeepers of the quality of the code. But again, this didn't feel right. So actually, one of the features we tried was code owners. This is a GitHub feature. It allows you to define teams or individuals responsible for a part of the code. Code owners are automatically requested for a review when someone opens a PR that modifies the code they own. To set up owners of your code in a GitHub repository, just create a file called code owners in the root or in the directory docs or .github and use the appropriate syntax to define your code owners. For example, in the iOS monorepo, we have defined code owners based on modules. Members of the iOS core team own the core modules, and engineers in each vertical team own their domain modules. Now, each team has to approve changes related to their feature. By doing this, we cause more potential issues that could be the root cause of bugs in production, and so we increase the code quality. This was definitely a step into the right direction, but for us, it wasn't enough. Not all of our code has an owner, and when it has, sometimes the approvals coming from owners aren't enough to merge a PR. So we were looking for a tool that could really help us to be faster at reviewing pull requests. We use Slack to communicate, and so we were looking for something in the middle between GitHub and Slack that could help us to not only assign PRs to engineers, but also to notify those people quickly. And so I'm very excited to present you a tool we created that it's called PR Assigner. PR Assigner automatically assigns engineers to pull requests on GitHub, integrating with Slack. This is a tool born during an internal hackathon. We started using it to manage iOS pull requests, and it really made a difference for us. PR Assigner randomly selects the number of engineers you require to merge a pull request and assign them to the PR you just opened. It is entirely written in Swift, and it runs on AWS using AWS Lambda. We'll talk about this. But the important bit here is that you don't need to change your CI pipeline. PR Assigner integrates with your Slack, posting a message in your PR channel, tagging assignees, but it also avoids to assigning engineers that aren't available based on their Slack status. It also fully supports code owners, so if you have them set in your repo, they will be assigned to the PR, and also you still have the freedom to choose manually who wants to get a review from. They will be tagged and notified in the Slack message. Let's quickly talk about the AWS Lambda. So this is one of the over 200 services that AWS offers on its platform. A Lambda is a serverless function service that allows you to run some code on AWS without really taking care about maintaining the hardware, configuring the machines where your code is running, making sure you have enough resources to scale based on the traffic. All of this overhead comes for free. You just need to upload your code and set the way this code is triggered. And this is also even more accessible for iOS developers. In May 2020, a blog post on the Swift website announced the support of Swift code for AWS Lambda. There is also a WWDC session from 2020 you can watch for an introduction on how to start using it. I think this is a great opportunity for iOS developers to explore new tools and services on AWS. As I said before, PR Assigner is entirely written in Swift, and the fact that you can use Xcode to write code for an AWS Lambda is amazing. It allows developers to not be forced to learn a new language or how to use a new IDE potentially, so they can focus on the new service itself. PR Assigner project uses Swift Package Manager for managing dependencies, such as Async HTTP Client, which is an open source library built on top of Swift Neo for managing the network layer of PR Assigner, or also Sato, an open source SDK that wraps REST APIs to use all the services on AWS. For example, PR Assigner uses Secrets Manager, which is an AWS service to securely store secrets to avoid committing them in your Git history. But as I said before, there are a lot of services on AWS you can use, and so will help you to interact with them from your Swift Lambda. Let me show you how PR Signer works. Everything starts with a hook on your GitHub repository that sends a pull request event to to API gateway. Again, this is an AWS service that exposes a public endpoint. When the endpoint receives a request, a Lambda function with PR Signer is triggered with the event payload that contains all the information about your pull request, such as the link, the author, the number of the PR, possible assignees you set from the GitHub interface. As I mentioned earlier, one of the first steps of PR Signer is to retrieve secrets from the secrets manager. In this case, they are the GitHub and Slack access tokens. PR Signer will then run its code to determine how many engineers you need to assign and who can be assigned based on their Slack status. A final step is to update the PR with the assignees and send a message on Slack to notify them. PR Signer can be configured using a YAML file in the root of your repository. You can customize the number of reviewers to assign to each PRs, the Slack channel in which PR Signer will drop messages, specify the list of reviewers, and also decide what emoji you consider to discard as Slack status. For example, at JustEat, we use the palm tree when we are on holiday, or the pile of books when we are taking time for some training. While I'm talking with you, PR Signer is probably assigning my colleagues to PRs. Till now, PR Signer helped us to manage thousands of pull requests. To measure its impact, I took inspiration from DevStats of Cloud Native Computing Foundation. We measured the PR engagement time, which is the amount of time between the creation of the pull request and the first review, no matter if it's an approval, a request of change, or just a commented one. For both the first review and the second review, the engagement time went down by 39%. Assignees take now half of the time to leave their review. And what is most important for us is that now the team doesn't feel frustrated anymore, and nobody is scared to lose time when it's time to open up a request. Results were so positive that PR Signer has been adopted internally by the web team, which is the team that looks after the JustEat website. So today, we can proudly say that all the features, refactors, or bug fixes for the JustEat iOS app and the website are managed by PR Signer. PR Signer has really made the difference for us. It improves our PR process, and it had such a positive impact that we decided to open source it, allowing even more teams that may have the same issues to give it a try. We are open to contribution to the project, so if you spot a bug or you would like to implement more features that your team may be interested, feel free to open up a request. Thanks all for attending these talks. Here are my contacts. So if you're going to give it a try to PR Signer, please send me a message on Twitter or an email. I'd love to hear from you what will be the impact of PR Signer to your team. Thanks.